For those of you in the corners, feel free to navigate around the beams. I asked if they could remove them for this talk. They said no, which was really unfortunate, but feel free to move around. Because if you've ever been to a talk of mine before, there will be a few activities for us all. When I was a kid, when I was a kid, I joined the Boy Scouts. And as a scout, we do a lot of things like knot tying and pioneering and camping and wilderness survival and all this sort of stuff. Now, I can vividly remember a point in time, I was about 10 years old. I was a weeblo, if you're familiar with the scouting program at all. I was in the 4th grade. And at the time, we were learning to tie knots. Now, out of curiosity, does anybody know what this knot is? Yes, it is a figure 8. Now, fun fact about the figure 8 is the figure 8, as different from a standard knot, is designed to come out more easily. So as a little word of advice, if you need to put a knot in a piece of rope, try a figure 8 instead and it'll come out a little easier even after tension. Anyway, back to where I was talking about. When I was a kid learning about knot tying, it was a fun thing, and if you've never done it before, it very much taps into that analytical side of the brain. Because you take this long piece of nothing and you turn it into something that's really useful beyond just creating tension. Now, at the time when I was 10 years old, my dad, who was also a Boy Scout and an Eagle Scout, and his father before him the same, was my troop leader. And so I remember very vividly when we would sit down in front of a lashing post, which is just a piece of wood that you tie a knot around, and learn how to tie knots. And I was utterly hooked. Knots were clearly my thing. But that was one of the first moments that I actually remember being mentored around anything. The scouting movement and many programs like it are built around this simple notion of those with experience and those going through the learning process coming together to help one another. That's the whole idea. And it's done in a very practical manner. Now, this is really helpful when I had to learn how to do something more like this. Because as a young man, I had eventually had to learn how to tie a different type of knot for a tie. And it was very helpful because I got pretty good at it. I could do some of the really fun and cool designs. But the reason why I'm showing you this specifically is because very often, this is what we lean into when we try and teach someone else: documentation. We lean into a step-by-step guide from, most of the time, our perspective. And for the other person on the other side of that, oftentimes that lack of tactile nature, that lack of direct one-on-one connection is the missing piece that makes it easy for somebody to be able to pick this up and move with it. Because here's the thing, especially when we talk about mentorship, is it kind of tends to look and feel like this. First, to draw an owl, draw 2 circles. Next, draw the fucking owl. And that's the thing that we want to prevent, right? So now I'm going to speak to everybody at home that might be watching this video. What we're about to go into next is something that I encourage you to participate in yourself. Because the intention here is to illustrate the different types of mentorship. And you at home, if you're watching this now, can learn along with all of us together. And I encourage you to not sit passively, sit up in your chair, let's get active and do a couple of things that are fun. Okay? Sound good? All right, here we go. Now, I posed a question. Does anyone see my post about how to count to 3? How many of you know how to count to 3? Okay, raise your hand if you know how to count to 3. All right. So, want to play a game? It's simple. You just got to count to 3. You with me? Okay, sounds good. Can I get 2 volunteers that know that they know how to count to 3? Come on, 2 volunteers. 1 and 2. Come on up, all the way up here. Come on up. And you're going to help us all count to 3 together. Okay? So go ahead and stand right here. And again, I'll be clear, all we're having to do is count to 3. Okay, so go ahead and stand up on the stage. You're now speakers. Okay, so your name is?
Derek.
Derek and?
Travis.
Derek and Travis. Can I get a round of applause for Derek and Travis? All right, so Derek and Travis, this is the rules of the exercise. You only have to count to 3, but here's how it works. you're going to go back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You get the idea? Now here's the rules of the game. If you stop or pause for any reason, you have to start over. But before you do, I need you to celebrate like you've never celebrated before. You hear me? Can we practice together, everybody? Okay, on the count of 3, I want you to celebrate like you've never celebrated before. And if you're sitting in your chair, unless you can only sit in your chair, Brittany, sorry about that. I want you to celebrate with me. And you at home do the exact same thing. Close the door, put a sign on it that says, don't worry, I'm still not crazy. Ready? On the count of 3, celebrate like you haven't in a long time. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Points to team over here on my right. Good job. Okay, I want you to model point team to the right. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Okay, very good. So Derek and, sorry again?
Travis. Sorry.
Travis. No, it's okay. I just need that. Derek and Travis, you're just going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If you hesitate at any point in time, that's it. Okay, you ready? Okay, speak loudly. Go ahead.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Oh, do it again. Celebrate with them. Celebrate with them. Come on. All right, start again. Ready, go.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
All right, very good. Give them a hand. So here's what I want you to do, okay? Here's what I want you to do is find a buddy if you can, if you feel comfortable doing so. Find a buddy. Look to your left, look to your right, look behind you. Find a buddy. Okay, when you have, put your hand up for me. Put your hand up. Okay, very good. And I want you to turn to this person if you feel comfortable doing that. And I want you to do the same exercise. I recommend you stand up if you can. But here is the most important thing. Most important thing is that you celebrate when you're done. Okay, celebrate when you're done. You got me? Yes? Okay, great. Let's give Derek and Travis one more hand. All right, wonderful. Okay, you can go sit back down. Okay, remember, 1, 2, 3. You start back over. If you hesitate at all, you've got to restart. But before you do, what do? Thank you very much. Okay, ready? And go. How fast can you go? How fast can you go? All right, for all of you at home, do the same thing. Find a buddy, probably your cat or dog. You're going to have a great time. All right, very good. Now take a seat if you want to. Put some energy into your body if you can. Now, I've got a thing I'd like to add. Well, let's start here. Raise your hand if you felt like you nailed it. Nailed it. Very good. Okay, you want a little bit more complexity? Anyone? Want to make it a little harder? Okay, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to clap on 1, then 2 and 3. Okay, ready? If you're willing to, find a different partner if you can. If not, and you want to really dig deep and come together as a team, that's fine too. You can do that. All right, ready? And go. Don't forget to celebrate. Clap on 1, 2, 3. Clap on 1. All right, once you do it 3 times successfully, go ahead and sit down again. 3 times successfully, go ahead and sit down again. Well, if we've gone this far, why the heck will we not make it even that much easier, right? Now I want you to clap on 1, say 2, and say nothing on 3. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Clap on 1, say 2, say nothing on 3. Don't forget to celebrate. right, go ahead, and if you can, on your feet, celebrate one more time. Great success, everybody. Out of curiosity, anybody feel like they were starting to figure it out? Okay, well, screw those notes. Okay, just kidding. No, very good. Well, here's the thing, is that it's a simple exercise, but it's illustrating one thing, which is sometimes it's hard to get the body going. But does anybody feel like they did, honestly and truly, start to figure some sort of pattern out? Some way to address it with somebody else? Yes, and what was that? Basically, after you say two, you clap. Yes, that's true, yes. Now, if we go back to the very first exercise when we're just talking about 1, 2, and 3, okay? If you actually break it down, you'll notice that you're saying 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. And if you just keep that in your head, then all you have to do is say 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. You just got to get through the first two. So I want you to try it one more time, and this time you just have to make it for the first two, and then think to yourself 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. You got it? One more time, and go. But don't forget to celebrate if you screw it up. All right, go ahead and do 1 or 2 more sequences and you are good to go. Give yourself one more hand after the fact. Wonderful, wonderful. So here's the deal about mentorship. I have a couple of core beliefs that I think about when we're talking about mentorship. And also I want to set some expectations because I don't have a ton of time to talk about the entire vastness of what mentorship can look like, how are we going to do it, all of the right practices, all of that sort of stuff. Instead, for this talk, what I want to focus on is a couple of essential beliefs and models that I have, given that for most teams, they lean into mentorship in this very ad hoc, let's just kind of work together thing. But again, like I said, I've got a couple of essential beliefs, and we might as well put 1, 2, 3 up here. Number 1, that bad mentorship is worse than no mentorship at all. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've worked with someone else or been on a project maybe dating back to a time when you were in school and you're like, this other person brought ego to the table or brought too many assumptions to the table and they didn't bring good sense of connection and trust and establish any of that in the relationship. And it may have left a bad taste in your mouth about the whole experience. Raise your hand if you think that has been true for you. Absolutely, and if you look around the room, almost everybody has their hand up. And this is because bad mentorship is a thing. And I want to be really clear about this, that if you find yourself going into mentorship simply to do mentorship without a model in place, you can run that risk. And we don't want that to happen at all. So what I'm going to talk about right now is a couple of ways in which you can look at mentorship so that you can at least have a foundational understanding of what are the different archetypes that you can utilize and apply them under what situations. But I'm going to say it again to set expectations. There's no way I can cover it all. So if you have questions after the fact, please come and talk to me. So the second belief I have is that mentorship can be formal and informal. When I opened and broadened my idea around what a mentor, what I could be as a mentor and what I could be as a mentee and who my mentors could be, I realized there's podcasters I listen to, there's authors, there's dead people that I read about that I've used as a form of mentorship where I try and put myself in the shoes of a mentee and imagine for a minute, what might it be like? How might they approach this with me solving this problem? And I discovered that I've got mentors across the spectrum. So mentorship is not just the live one-to-one, the person next to you thing. Mentorship can come from all over the place. The third belief I have, I already hit on before, is that there are archetypes. There are personality and functional types that mentors can take on that address certain types of needs for the mentee. And that is the thing I'm going to talk about the most today. Okay? Clap on one, say two, but don't forget, celebrate. Actually, let me hit on that real quick. Why celebrate? Anyone know? Celebrate mistakes. Our brains are this really interesting neural engine, right? We got all these neurons that are wired up. They create beliefs, establish patterns, right? Ours are all different and all unique. But there are certain things that we discovered over time that are true. And one of those is that you can program your brain. It is possible. And one of the ways you can do that is to establish a new pattern set. When this happens, that is what I'll feel. And one of the ways you could do that is establish celebration whenever you either feel failure or you feel like you didn't do what you expected to do. And so if you force yourself to celebrate, you will literally map a new model inside your brain that will encourage you to look at it positively. With me? Great. Okay, let's talk about the archetypes. The first archetype I want to talk about is the coach. Now, coaching and mentorship often find themselves in two different categories. But in reality, and the way I'm going to talk about it today, is that there is a type of mentor that is more of a coaching mentor. Now, a coaching mentor is one that is oftentimes has high levels of experience, yet is often more abstracted from the direct tactile problem. So as an example, you might be an engineering manager or you might be a technical lead, and you might be mentoring somebody that's more junior or more inexperienced, or maybe even they're dealing in a part of the code base that you just simply aren't familiar with. And so you might find yourself more in a coaching capacity. Now, the coach mentor is less of a doer. This is not somebody that you will expect to dive in, do the work with you real time. That's not this type of mentor. This is somebody that's much more rich in experience. They might have spanned a greater breadth of knowledge in various domains. But their insight and their knowledge is applied in a very fundamental way, right? They're looking for, what I'll talk about in a little bit, more of the lead dominoes. What are the essential building blocks of understanding that this mentee needs to have right now? So they're going to often direct their attention to the questions that they're asking, not the solutions that they're building or providing. This type of mentor is one that you can very easily get out of books, podcasts, or dead people, right? Is the coaching mentor. And I would say that there are some actual trained professional coaches that are phenomenal mentors that aren't in tech or anything like that. But what they do is they approach it from this perspective of what are the building blocks, what are those deficits, what potential do I see in this mentee, and how am I going to apply those pieces to the puzzle to help encourage them to move forward down a path that's constructive to them. With me? Next one. Oh, and sorry, and I just went through this. So they use the guiding questions, and they also encourage a try, fail, and succeed model. One of the great challenges that a good coach can have, or one that is getting into coach mentorship, is not to provide the answer. This is a really critical piece. The patience that a coaching mentor has to have is really critical. So this try, fail, succeed is effectively to say, I'm going to ask the question here, hoping to get you thinking and moving down the right direction, but I'm going to encourage you to try a bunch of things. You're likely going to fail at some and succeed at others. But my role here is to get you moving mentally down that place. And again, like I said, they're looking for the lead domino. What is a lead domino? Imagine a line of dominoes. Everyone familiar with what dominoes are? Okay, so you've got a bunch of dominoes. You tip the first one over. The idea is it keeps tipping the rest over. The concept of a lead domino is, what's that first domino? What's the thing that when I tip that over, everything else starts to fall in place? So I'm not doing the same amount of effort here and the same amount of effort here and da-da-da-da. No, like what's the one that if I get this one going, it's going to start moving things in the right direction? This is the real skill of a great coach mentor. The beauty is that if you get into this and you play this role, you're going to discover that basically the same things just keep coming up. It's almost always the same dominoes. The next is the consultant. There's consulting, but coincidentally, this is often where mentorship often comes up in a consulting relationship. Now, the consultant is this interesting hybrid between the coach and the one I'll talk about next, the colleague, in that the consultant is much more about the options. When we hit the fork in the road, this is the one I think we should go down. I don't necessarily know that's always the answer, but my experience, my knowledge, my basis of understanding draws me to here. That's the consulting mentor. So again, the consulting mentor is one that's going to lean into the menu of options, right? My role here is less about helping you establish foundational knowledge, and it's much more about helping you make your decisions, okay? So they're providing a menu of options, and then they're encouraging a test and assess model. So instead of a try and fail, it's a no, we're here to succeed in the process, and this is much more common, especially when we're looking at engineering teams where you have maybe you're pairing a more senior or experienced person with a less experienced person. But the encouragement is, let's test that and see what succeeded or did not. So test and assess, right? This is where if you follow the practice of test-driven development, you can lean into that here. If you don't follow it, that's okay, but you can still use a testing framework to sort of leverage this model with them. Now, one of the most important things about this, kind of like the coach, is you don't want to just jump to the answer and take away the learning experience from your mentee. This is why that first bullet point, providing options, is so essential. Because of the options, one will likely work out, but you can discuss them all, and that's the goal. We're going to talk them through, get an idea of what's effective. What's your thoughts on that? How can we sort of work this problem together? Now, the thing they're looking for more than anything is inconsistencies. Inconsistencies in practice, inconsistencies in approach, inconsistencies against the greater team, things like that. I'm going to give you an example. Now, if you go online, there's a talk I've given a lot called Mechanically Confident. And the core thesis of this talk centers around this idea that confidence is not exclusively the byproduct of belief and time. Yelling into a mirror, I'm confident, 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 only gets you so far. It's my belief that confidence is actually the byproduct of ingrained routines. The more you practice and do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, you will function confidently even if emotionally you don't quite feel that way. Well, the same thing applies here. The role of the consultant is often to help encourage those routines and that practice so that the inconsistencies start to go away. An experience I had was I was working with less experienced folks that were coming out of an internship, and I was noticing that they were seeing the same errors over and over again, but it was as if they were starting from zero every time. And I knew it wasn't that they weren't capable. It wasn't that. I was just really fascinated by it. It's like you're seeing the same error again and the same error again, and you seem to be going back to zero every time. One of the observations I made was that the windows on their screen were everywhere. Some were tabbed, some were not. Like everything was crazy. And I'm not saying that you can't be somebody that has a messy workstation in that way, but what I also observed was more experienced people tend to have real order and control to their chaos. They know where everything is living. Even if it looks crazy to you, to them, they're very well aware. And so I had this hypothesis, it was like, well, maybe it has something to do with the cognitive load of trying to hang on to it all. And so what if we just instilled a pattern? What if we just instilled a practice? And sure enough, within a short period of time, they were able to start to recognize the same things over and over and over again. And that's the role that a consultant can have, and it's very, very powerful. The last, and the one that is often so overlooked, is what I'm referring to as the colleague. So I also believe that mentorship can come from somebody that is going through the journey with you. There was a study done on runners, and they found that runners, when paired up together and ran together, would run 18% harder than on their own. The reasons why was there was some natural accountability to one another. There was also this sense of camaraderie, but of course competitiveness would kick in. I mean, if you're going to go do a 9-minute mile, I'm going to do a 9-minute mile. It's kind of the idea, right? So the same thing can apply in learning, and in fact, it is insanely powerful. If you pair people up one-to-one, and that's what this model is all about, and one of those people is just one step ahead of the other, right? They just might have learned it, right? You can pair two very junior people together, two senior people together, two mid-level people together. You pair them up where their skill set is basically the same, but one has just done it a little more than the other. You will be blown away by how fast they level up. And the reason for that is because they both know where they were starting from. Raise your hand if you've done mentorship as a mentor. Keep your hand up if your mentee or most of the mentees you worked with were far more junior than you. Okay, most of the time, we pair very senior with very junior. It's actually not the best combo. The best combo are two people that are going through a similar enough journey where one can remember the struggle of the other, right? Because they were just there. I was listening to a talk by a few years ago, and the gentleman that was giving the talk, who was in the educational system, they were building a JavaScript program, and they were teaching this curriculum, and the students just really weren't picking it up, and they couldn't quite figure out why. But what they discovered was when they started to ask the students where they were getting stuck, they realized that they had not spent enough time on what is a browser, right? So because there was such a gap there of experience and knowledge, the people on this side, the experience side, drew so many assumptions around what the people over here understood in the beginning. And so they couldn't connect with them well. This is why peer-to-peer or colleague mentorship is so powerful. But the most important part about colleague mentorship is that it is one-to-one. I don't know of a better method than pairing. Generally speaking, I'm a huge pair programming advocate, and this is one of the reasons why, because when you're real-time pairing, when we're trying to solve the same problem together and the same time, the power of that is collective learning and growth. When we're kind of in different zones, but sort of in the same, it's hard to like bring it together. I'm gonna go through my learning journey, you're gonna go through yours, and hopefully they collide in the middle. But if we do actual pair programming, this is incredibly powerful. So they lean into pair programming. There is equal collaboration, so this is really important. The mentor-mentee is not necessarily labeled. It's just that the mentor-mentee is just the byproduct of that dynamic. So, and mostly it's because egos tend to be squelched a little bit more successfully that way. But the last thing is the pair or the individuals in this dynamic are looking for disengagement, right? When we're pairing, if one person is just not in, like they're not here, they're not really contributing or playing a role, that's the thing that each other needs to watch out for. Because when that starts happening and neither of them are fully engaged with one another, things start to break down. So those are the three. The three archetypes of a coach, a consultant, and a colleague. And if you lean into those three and know which one you're gonna apply where, then you can start to have really productive mentorship sessions and identify what deficits for the mentees in the room what tools for the mentees in the room do we need to apply, which roles and where. Act 2. But let's talk about the methods, all right? Because we gotta roll this sucker out, right? We gotta make sure that it's successful. Because if I go into this thing saying to myself, I'm a coach, but I have no damn idea what I'm doing, it's no use, yes? Okay, so we have to make sure that we actually have a method, a way, an approach. Now, like I said, I'm gonna say it for the third time, I can't give you each and every way, good way or different way. This is just a way, but I hope that it gives kind of a foundational layer to the topic of mentorship and it's useful to you. So, talk about these 3 stages: the planning stage, the practice stage, and the review stage. Now, for each of these 3 stages, there's a critical question that we need to be asking ourselves as the mentor in these situations, and for some of them as the mentee. So these are your critical questions. So the first one is in the planning phase. Our critical question is, what is the outcome of this session? Just putting 2 people together and saying, go work on a problem is not mentorship. Mentorship is an actual learning experience. So the way we have to start that is, well, what's the outcome of this experience? What are we here to learn? So if you take 5 minutes as a mentor-mentee pair and you get on the same page with what's our outcome, what's our learning objective, what are we trying to get out of this session, then now we're gonna move forward more successfully. I have a challenge for you. You ready for another challenge? Are you ready for another challenge? I knew it. All right, I have a challenge for you. It's a very simple challenge. Are you ready for a simple challenge? Excellent. Whatever you do, don't think about an elephant. Don't think about an elephant. Raise your hand if you're not thinking about an elephant. Great, you're not thinking about an elephant? Not an elephant at all? Not one elephant? Not a small elephant or a big elephant? Not a small, but a big elephant. Okay. Here's the reality, is if you plant an outcome in the conversation, you can't help but stay bound to that to some extent. And as a mentor, if we say, what is the outcome of this situation is to do X, then we can keep revisiting that outcome and reassess whether or not we're on track or off track in this session. You with me? Okay. The practice, the core question to ask during the practice portion of it. So now that we've planned it out and we've clarified our outcome, the next thing is to clarify what's our roles and responsibilities. Okay? So again, as the coach mentor, my primary role is to ask critical questions, not give you the answer. Right? So that's my role. My responsibility is to serve you as the mentee and to put you in a situation where you can try things out and succeed. All right? Consultants, same thing. As a consultant, my role here is to give you a menu of options that we can explore together. We want to test those things out, assess whether or not we were successful, and continue to move forward. Okay? As the colleague, this is, if you remember when I said the mentor-mentee dynamic is intentionally not clearly defined between the two people because they need to function as equals, then they share the same role and responsibility, which is to stay engaged in the pair program actively together. Ideally, there's a driver-navigator combination where some people's got hands on the keyboard and they're flip-flopping to the other person and vice versa. So that is our role and that is our responsibility. So making sure to clarify those things so that we can be successful and then to stick into that for the entire mentorship session. Last one, the review. And this one, friends, is super, super important and very quickly skipped. What did we learn? So if you go through an hour-long mentorship session where we did a bunch of things, we had an outcome, we planted that, we said, boom, outcome, here it is, flag flying, outcome. We're like, great, we just did a bunch of things, wonderful. Where did we go? That's the goal. We got to make sure that our outcome is really, really clear and that we go back and review and reflect. That can take 5 minutes. You don't need to take a ton of time. Now, a good way in which you can handle this review session is simply ask, start with your outcome. This is the thing that we went through. How did you feel? Do you feel like we got there? Do you feel like we could have done better? Do you feel like there was something missing? Like, how did you feel? Next is, what did we objectively do? Do a quick review. This is the beauty of utilizing a source or a version control system, right? You can just look through your source. This is a great time to like commit what you have if you're a company that does work in progress commits, things like that, right? But this is that opportunity right here. And Git is beautiful for this because you could just go through your different adjustments and review them. Yes? Great. Okay. So this is the cycle right here. The plan, the practice, the review. There's one step that's super important at the very, 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 very end, which is plan for your next session. When will we do that? So are we going to meet again on Monday at 10 o'clock? Make sure you set that anchor. Now, part of the reason for this is because, especially if we're working with people that are newer and people that may be suffering from imposter syndrome and we don't entirely know that, is anchoring moments in time that create certainty are very important. So if you create that moment of certainty for them and for yourself and stick to it, very important as well, then you can create a really beautiful cycle where things get really productive and really goal-driven, goal growth-driven. Okay. Last thing, let's talk about how we roll this sucker out, all right? So, I am an individual contributor. I believe that mentorship is powerful. My manager says to me, but it takes too much time. And I say back to them, yes, it does. Okay. How are we going to roll this thing out where we're talking about the value of mentorship? Because the harsh realities are that if your company does not already embrace the value of collective collaborative work, real-time collaborative work, such as pair programming, it can be a tough sell sometimes. Because there's this easy thing to lean into that it's like, oh, well, it's 2 people time. Why don't we just hire for the brilliant person to start with? Things like that. Okay, so how do we address that? Well, there's many ways in which we can do that. And if you have questions for your unique situation, I highly encourage you to come talk to me. I would love to help you out with that because I think it's very, very important. But I'm going to introduce 2 ways in which you can create a simple conceptual framework that you can lean yourself into. And if you get the rest of your team on board with at least leaning into conceptually, it will make the conversation around starting active mentorship a little easier. So the first is, let's create a simple spreadsheet that puts all of our teammates down one column and all of the roles around the top column and identify who is good at that. Who would be a great coach? Who is a great consultant? Who is just a stellar pair programming colleague? Who would fall into these buckets? And this is something that you can do. You just put it in the spreadsheet and you put notes into it. I added a simple notes column down the end. But the whole goal here is let's actively talk about it. It's pretty low-hanging fruit, right? We can just have this conversation. We don't have to feel like we're committing to anything, but at least we can identify where's the skills in the room, right? Who would be great in these different places? One caveat. Hierarchy is irrelevant here, okay? This is a personality component. This is skills that people have that are innate. There's people that have been on my team in different companies that have decades more life experience than I do. They're phenomenal coaches, but in the world of programming, they're much more novice, okay? So hierarchy is not the relevant factor here. Now, this is for identifying who great mentors could be and what roles they could be. And you could be all of the above. There could be conditions here in which things work out really well. But just use this to start the conversation around what roles are good for which people and make that a team discussion. The second thing, and it looks very similar, is you start to map out what experiences these people have as mentees, okay? Because we all need mentorship at some level. So what those 3 columns at the top are about is experiences, team experience, right? Does Adam have team experience here? Does he have experience in the role he's in? What does that look like? Where does his skills lie? And the last one is domain experience, and specifically towards our organization, our code base, the things that we're doing. So if we can, again, take some notes here and get really clear, we can also add the last column, which is not a notes column, but it's a needs column. This is the area in which I need more support. So as an example, I might be very familiar with the team. I could be coming from a different division. I might be very familiar with the role, but I have no experience with this stack or this application, right? So the need for me is not necessarily coaching nor consulting, it's colleague pairing. That might be the answer that you come to. And you can sort of do the same sort of needs assessment across the board at any point in time. Just keep it simple, make it easy on yourself. Now, once you've done these 2 things and you've created this matrix that represents skill sets potentially as a mentor and maybe conditions around that, and then you have this list that represents what you need as a mentee, now we can start to identify, well, where is some of the low-hanging fruit? Well, geez, I mean, it's very clear that on our last one, Eric is a phenomenal coach, and he coincidentally has an hour of time a week. Well, if he's a great coach, and we only need an hour of his time in that coaching mentorship, well, let's go back to our other simple list and figure out who needs that support. So we don't need to institute mentorship across every spectrum of the company. We can just start there. And by slow rolling that adoption, sooner or later, it's just like pair programming, sooner or later, everybody just sees the value in it. You feel the value of that change. And that's the thing that we can lean into. Okay. That's going to wrap up this portion of it. But before we get there, I want to encourage you, this is a little bit of a shameless plug, kind of, sort of. So Learn Academy, which is the organization that I work for, we're running the Career Pathways room. And up there, you can scan a QR code, get a duck. Also, you get added into a list to win a prize, like a really cool prize, like we'll sing you happy birthday even if it's not your birthday kind of prize. I want to encourage you to get on this list for a couple of reasons, and this is intentionally value to you. Number one is because we are going to be sending out mentorship-oriented content. This is a topic that matters a lot to us for a very simple reason. We work with a lot of junior people who are going from zero to their first job. I don't know if you know this, but getting your first job in tech is nowhere easy. It's really, really hard. And we're working very, very hard to change that. Part of what we identified very quickly is super important is companies out there have to get better at mentorship to welcome these people in and support them. If they're never good at that stage and the only experiences that are getting are bad mentorship experiences, then what do you expect to happen? They're going to leave. We don't want that. So we are actively trying to help solve this problem. So the selfish side of it is this is self-serving to the organization. The selfless side of it is I do this because I really value the people that are sitting in the room, all of which have ambition, hunger for a new career path, and they just need a foot in the door. And if the organizations around them were more supportive of that, I know they would. So if you would, scan that code for me. If you're willing to, I promise you that you're not going to get a bunch of junk. I will not send you a picture of myself waving at you. That's the first one you'll get probably. But instead, scan this. There's a survey that you can participate in. If you do, take it up to the Career Pathways room. We're going to give you a really sweet duck, and you're going to get added into a drawing where you can win a really fun prize here at RailsConf. I hope you enjoy it. That's a multi-functioning survey of sorts, so some of it's going to make sense, some of it won't, but that's okay. But please add yourself to it. We really want to help make mentorship better, okay? Thank you so much for your time. So if you want to go, you're welcome to. I've got a few more minutes. Do you want to play one more game? One more game. You want to play one more game? Okay, one more game before we go. Here's how it works. If you have seen this before, don't say anything, because I'm going to need you in a minute. If you've seen me do this before, don't say anything. These three symbols represent three numbers. I promise you, it's not a trick question. 1 through 9. If you know how this works, don't say anything. 1 through 9. If you have no idea how this works, take a guess. What are these three numbers? What do you think? 3, 9, 8. Okay, good guess. Anyone else? 1, 2, 3. Really great guess. It's not it, though. What else? 3, 4, 8. Okay? 1, 1, 4. Interesting. I'm going to help you all out for a minute. I'm going to give you the answer-ish. Okay? Pay really close attention, because I'm going to give you the key. I'm going to show you what symbol relates to what number. Ready? Pay very close attention. What is it? You're thinking right now, what is it? Okay, raise your hand once you think you figured it out, what the three numbers are. Keep your hand up, keep your hand up, keep your hand up. Once you figured it out, Do you know? Okay. Once you figured it out. Okay, are you ready? You ready? Ready? And what's that one? I just gave you all 9. It's only 9 things. It's only 9 things. You people can keep entire Ruby libraries in your head. It's only 9 things. Okay, fine. One more chance. What is it? What is it? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Raise your hand when you figured it out. Now you're thinking to yourself, oh, this idiot's going to now throw 3 totally different things in front of me, so don't pay attention to those numbers. I'm going to jump onto the other numbers. What is it? What is it? What is it? Ready? What do you think? It's the same one. Say it again. 9, 6, 8. Okay? Here's our numbers. Here's the thing. Often when we teach stuff, we throw a bunch of documentation in front of people and say, duh, answers, right? But it's not really that simple, right? Sometimes what we need is just a little bit of context, right? Just a little bit of context. Does this help out at all? Got it? So what's the number?
9, 6, 8.
How about that one?
1, 7, 5.
Good job. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please come see me. For all of you watching at home, you can reach out at me on the interwebs. Thank you everyone for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your RailsConf. It's been my pleasure.